Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
And we are back.
So you see the title on this one. Space aliens are breeding with humans. University instructor says. Scientists say otherwise. Well, of course, scientists would say otherwise. They would say, well, where's the evidence? There's no evidence of aliens.
I know they have to have everything fit in this little box of theirs.
Yeah, and of course we have to follow the money train.
Oh, yeah.
That's the basic thing, is follow the money train, because so many of these scientists, top schools, top corporations, yeah, on down the line, we've seen it. We've seen what Smithsonian's done with hiding evidence, what NOAA does, what NASA does. They're all, for the most part, under control of the powers that be. And so they can't have their story blown. They can't have their cover blown,
I know. Well, they're comfortable with their homes and their cars, so.
Maybe you've never seen any space aliens, and we should throw in too, interdimensional beings, because this is where things get, well, misconstrued in some ways, and lines get blurred. There are beings that are on the same vibratory level as we are that do utilize vehicles, and then they're to get around. But then there are also beings that are way more advanced and can actually manipulate our time-space continuum and travel through different dimensions and densities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are. And it's really interesting how these beings do this. And this has been kept from us for a very long time.
Up to 6% of Americans claim to have been abducted.
Wow.
That's a big chunk. 6% that would even admit it. Because really, when you look at it, the trauma and the stigmatism, people go, oh, they think they got abducted by aliens. Yeah. It's not something you want to come out and really say. If you want to, have people think you're sane, but yet in this day and age, it's changing so fast because of disclosure.
Well, they've set the system up so that, if people do talk about it, they're going to be shunned and laughed at.
So an instructor at the University of Oxford in England believes that abductions are real. Young Hae Chi, who teaches Korean at the university, also claims to know what the aliens have in mind. In lectures given at the university, he says they're creating alien-human hybrids. And he says it's maybe a hedge against climate change. Interesting. Now, he talks about David Jacobs, a retired Temple University historian who has published several books on ufology as well. I've read some of his works as well. And he interviewed more than 1,000 people who claim to have been abducted using hypnotic regression. And that does work. And, gets into things like we've been always talking about, what happened to Homo erectus? Where'd it go? Yeah. And then, this one branch of the family tree stops and another one pops right up. Now, some of it could be natural, like what we're talking about happening now with the cosmic rays and mutation, but some of it is perhaps getting nudged.
I feel there's a lot of nudging going on there.
So the most commonly talked about, thought about, and spoken about aliens, I would say, are the grays.
Absolutely. I believe so, too, because they're so commonly depicted everywhere.
Yeah, and, when we talk about Roswell, it was grays. When we talk about Barney and Betty Hill, the abduction case, that was, again, grays. Betty Andreasen, now hers is really, really interesting. And it made me very, very interested in it, mostly because she was in Connecticut. It was really close to where I was living. And also the fact that not only do we have grays, but we have these tall Nordics that are there as well, in her case, that look very, very much, you could interpret them as being angelic beings, or, very much also like the Nords that were talked about with the Nazis as well. And of course the grays were there, making deals with Eisenhower. At least that's what the rumor is.
It's very fascinating what they say is happening.
There's a lot of different types of grays, though, too. And some grays are biological, some are not biological at all.
I've heard that, too. I've heard a lot of different things, and I can kind of see why people would perceive them as part biological, part not, because these beings, they do what they're told.
Okay, so I think we'll see humanity, if we survive along the path that we're on right now. And, things take longer to change, such as the changing of the ages and all. We'll see a lot of robots. We'll see a lot of like android type things going on as they want to merge humanity with robotics and eventually merging with AI. We'll see a lot of worker bees out there, and that's what these guys are. These guys are worker bees, and they're utilized by many different societies out there. You have seen greys on Pleiadian ships.
I have, and they were friendly, they were happy, they were high vibrational little critters, and they were happy to be there to be of service.
Yeah. So, again, the world and the universe, the multiverse, is filled with an innumerable shades of gray. So, things are not so black and white that you could say, well, that's a servant of Satan and that's a servant of God. No, things aren't that simple. There's beings out there that have their own agendas that are basically indifferent to humanity and, wouldn't necessarily stop to help you, but wouldn't necessarily go out of their way to hurt you. Then there's beings that, feed off of us in an energetic fashion and occasionally, according to what we've heard, maybe in a non-energetic way as well.
Absolutely, these beings that feed off of our energy, it's called loosh. That's what humans put off as a type of energy for them to sustain themselves.
So, this is talking about the Greys and their relationship to other races, such as the reptilians, which utilize them most definitely en masse. Greys are... Well, we don't know the population statistics, how many Pleiadians are out there in the universe, and how many Arcturians, how many Greys, how many Draco. We do know from the Law of One, or what we get from the Law of One, if you trust in it, and it does feel pretty good in most cases, the info that we've gotten out of the Law of One, is that the good guys really outnumber the bad guys, maybe 75% to 25% or 80 to 20, even though you wouldn't necessarily think it on a prison planet.
No, you wouldn't think that. We're given this little tiny box to believe in.
So, the fact is there's all different sorts of Greys out there. Some Zeta Reticulan, there's others as well. Like we were saying, some of these are just totally synthetic, totally manufactured. And there's some basically being utilized by the good guys and some being utilized by some that we would say are not so good. Right. From a human perspective, because again, everything is from the perspective of the self.
Right, that's really all we got. So, and then other information as well, but for the most part, yes, I agree.
And, you guys might be familiar with the Battle of Dulce, which if you've read any of, or listened to Phil Schneider talk before he left us, he talked about it being between a couple Greys and like a whole bunch of Marines, in which, the losses were, just incredibly fast and swift because of the technology, as the Marines didn't have really a chance.
No, they didn't. It was lasers against, bullets, which was insane.
Yeah, so very interesting. And some do have the ability to change their density. So again, there's a lot of different ones being out there, and again, you could think of them as the worker bees that are used by so many different races and cultures. So this is a video that came out of Mexico, and it's curious because it does feel fairly legit.
It really did. When I looked at it, I didn't get anything that felt deceitful.
Yeah, this little guy, these guys go running, and then this little guy just kind of bobs out here and creeps across, because we've experienced them moving a lot like that.
Yes, that definitely looks like the way they would move for sure.
So, where is the evidence? There are people that are of the mind that before Roswell happened, nobody ever thought of, gray aliens, or before, Orson Welles with the War of the Worlds, right? Little green men, little gray men. Well, I mean, when we look through what we have with different artwork, different pieces from many, many different cultures, that are very, very ancient, hundreds of years old, thousands of years old. You see all these depictions. This looks really much like a classic saucer in so many ways. And we also have depictions of beings with these interesting shaped faces, don't you think? It's really reminiscent of the Greys. Now, again, the Greys come in a wide variety, all different heights. The article there was listing between 5 and 8 feet tall. But what I have seen is between more like 3 feet and maybe as much as 8 or 9 feet tall.
And as I'm looking at this one too, look, this looks like wings on there too, which is curious.
Yeah, you can see so much in these depictions. There's just so much right there, and we also have seen a lot of beings with conical heads. It's just one of those things, another perfect flying saucer. I did a couple of videos just showing all the religious iconography with Christ and Mary, and there's UFOs up in the sky all the time. And we got these sculptures. Look at that head. Look at that head. And look at the baby. Talking about hybrids. So if we're talking about it being all about experimenting with DNA and genetics, well, there you go. There's your Nephilim. It's all about interbreeding and things and hybridization.
Yes, and the evidence is just thick. There's a lot of evidence that these beings walked the earth.
Yeah, they're still here now. We just literally had a little visit just a little while ago. We could sense them. We could hear them running on the roof. And some people will think, oh boy, these two are crazy. That's Cindy and Mike. Oh my God. No, it's not happy hour, It's just a daily occurrence because, they monitor certain people, and my dad, he was really, really quiet. But the one thing, he was brought up Catholic, and I do think he still believed, but yet he knew aliens were real. He never really told me how. He just said he's seen some things. And he knew that they were real. He had no doubt. And being a good Catholic boy that he was. Because he had experiences. And then both my kids, were tormented with experiences throughout their childhood. It was just, and of course I've had experiences since I was a little kid as well. So again, they follow certain bloodlines. They follow certain families. They are doing experiments, most definitely.
Yeah, and it doesn't just stop at the RH bloodlines either. It definitely goes far beyond that.
Yeah, interesting figures we have here. Curious. How about these coins? Some of these are ancient, and they got some interesting depictions on them, and some of them are just fun. But we see these depictions time and time again in so many different cultures. That's an interesting little baby you got there. Doesn't have your eyes.
No, it doesn't, does it? It's cute.
And then you got the taller ones. And, there is one of these taller ones that's been assigned to me since 2017. It probably was earlier. I just did not become aware of it until 2017 when I woke up in my bed in Florida, in Sarasota, because I felt something energetically push into my abdomen. And then I woke up and saw it right there, and it looked away from me, and it went into a meditative state. I could feel it surprised that I was able to wake up, and I just watched it for about 90 seconds as it slowly faded out into just like an energy pattern. But this guy was in between 8 and 9 feet tall. The bedroom had a cathedral ceiling in it, and it was clear as day to me, absolutely clear as day. And we've also had it follow us on hikes when we were in Nevada, close to Area 51 and snooping around.
Yes, they have their missions.
Most definitely. So these guys can be 8 to 9 feet tall, and interesting, their arms are super long. It's like the forearm is the length of my entire arm, and 3 fingers is what I saw. Palish gray. Very intelligent. I could tell it was extremely intelligent, and it felt like it was a scientist, or really not even a scientist, more like a lab tech.
Yeah, I kind of got that too when I looked at it.
So Aleister Crowley was in contact with a higher being, quote unquote, and this is the depiction that we have another looks very much like another offshoot of a gray. Now, this says here, the only demon that physically manifested to Aleister Crowley looked like this. Still think they're aliens. Yeah. I do think they're aliens. Again, they're extraterrestrials. Are they from here? Well, not if we're talking about Zeta Reticulum. They're not from here. Are they a demon? Not in the traditional sense. Again, why use one single word that doesn't describe things adequately enough? Yeah, there are demons. I've seen these demonic energies that look like black holes with glowing red eyes and hiss kind of like a snake. And again, that's probably not a good enough classification. The original word is daemon, and it's Greek. So this is how people have been put into a tiny little box. And, they can't get out of that tiny little box unless they open up their minds. And recognize there's so many different forms of life out there. And as I've said before, would you say every single thing that flies is a sparrow? Well, that's taken away from the grandeur of an eagle or a hawk. And not everything that swims in the sea is a whale, coincidentally. And not every mammal is a dog, even though it would be a pretty nice world with a lot of puppies.
Well, just look at the insects and how many different variety of insects there are. You can put that to, beings too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a short-sighted view of things, but it's because of conditioning, societal conditioning that wants you to keep your mind closed. Do not insert any new ideas in there. You might actually learn to think for yourself, which is dangerous. Thinking for yourself, not trusting what you're told, and everybody just go out and do your own research, As Buddha said, don't believe anything because I told you. Don't believe it because your parents told you. Don't believe it because your teachers or any other priests. You got to go out and do your own research and then combine mind and heart and feel what feels right. Curious guy over here, isn't there? Interesting faces on these guys. Are they just wearing masks? And it looks like they're probably going to do some sort of sacrifice, but are they going to sacrifice or are they salvaging something? Some DNA, perhaps?
Yeah, it's hard to say there.
Another curious depiction of a saucer and interesting beings. And so this is from the movie Jupiter Rising, and this felt like one of the really wildest depictions. This is kind of how these guys move. They are very, very stealthy and cunning as foxes.
Yeah, this one, it kind of made everything make sense to me after watching this Jupiter Rising.
Yeah. And also there's an interesting depiction of who they work for. Not all of them, but, there are those that are working under this draconian influence, which is a real source of control in this world.
And most definitely, yes.
Interesting how you could look at that and say, wow, he looks like a devil.
Yeah, he does.
Get behind me, Satan. Right? When we look at all these origins, the real origins, and, again, it's not just Egypt, it's not just Central America, it's not just India, it's everywhere.
It is everywhere across the globe, all over the planet. You keep coming into this time and time again.
Yep. And so, whether we're talking, biblical with Nephilim, etc., and there's more than one type again, and we get into the stories of the giants, all the abduction cases of which, there's countless abduction cases. And then you have people like Paul Hellyer coming out. You have other people that were in very, very high places in governments, and also, people working inside some of these labs next to, where Greys are in the deep underground military bases. There's been just countless people that come out and say that, to this reality that these things do exist. And, genetic experimentation seems to be one of the key, if not the most important thing that they're doing.
It's so true, though, because there's so much information. Not everybody could be lying,
Oh, gosh, no. No, it's not all a huge cover-up. And again, it does seem like one of their top items on this agenda is all about, DNA. And with the darker forces, it's all about keeping us locked into a very, very limited wavelength.
And keeping our frequency low and keeping us in a state of fear.
Very interesting stuff. So guys, as always, I want to thank you for being part of this family. Make sure you are subscribed and have the bell clicked. And I thank you also for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. Keep your eyes to the skies. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.